Hello everyone, welcome back to Naomi's Bookshelf. Today we're going to talk about Les Mis. So over the course of the summer, I read this with a group of wonderful ladies and people in general as we did a read along, and my heart was pulled out, stomped on, put back in place, and then pulled out and stomped on and repeat process. So I don't really know where to go with this. This is my Timeless Tomes edition. I figured this might be a way to wrap up all my feelings. I'm still thinking about this book, and honestly, I felt like I should do this video. I genuinely don't know what to do with this because there are just so many thoughts swirling around in my head about this. So I do have a whole playlist of all of our live streams where we discussed everything, and I will link that playlist in the description box if you want to check it out. There are 5 of them, so it's a lot to watch, but we talked a lot. So in this regards, I feel like I'm just going to talk about my overall feelings. I don't know what else to do. Normally I would do very intentional discussion about themes and just like overall intentions, but I feel like I cannot do this with this book because it's just so ingrained in my summer and I spend so much time thinking about it. So this is going to be much more of a reflection on Les Mis this time around. So if you are brand new to what Les Misérables by Victor Hugo is, it is a very long and very thick book, but very wonderful story about Jean Valjean, who was in prison because he stole a loaf of bread and then he tried to escape in the middle of that sentence. And so he was in prison for 19 years. And during those 19 years, he actually was in prison for that time period, and he managed to get out on parole after that period. And after that 19 years, he struggled to find work. This is mostly about him and his journey post-prison, and it follows his ups and downs. It is really about his character growth and people he meets along the way. There are a lot of deviant side plots, side quests, as we called them in our read-along group, because it really felt like a quest. They were long, but they also added to the plot in a lot of ways, and yeah, I don't know what else to say. It follows him from that time all the way up into the end of his life. So yeah, it's really powerful, and it's a journey that you go on as a reader, and it is difficult, but it is worth it. Like it's a process, and I'm just so glad I finally read it. So I don't know what else to say. You follow many characters that he meets throughout his life, and his life really does have those highs and those lows. And I highly recommend it if you are at all interested. This is a French classic, and it is like a historical fiction from the time it was written. I think it was written in like the 1860s, and it follows the French Revolution. I think like late French Revolution. So yeah, I don't know what else to say. It's definitely, it hits ya. It's like a lifetime accomplishment of a book for me. So I don't know what else to say. I'm genuinely speechless. So I don't even know how much I'm going to talk about this in this video. I don't know how long this video is going to be. So if it's like 30 minutes long, I'm saying that now and I'm very sorry. So now I'm just going to talk spoiler terms, I guess, because that's kind of just what I want to do with this video, more specifically as I do want to just discuss my feelings and overall thoughts on this book. I feel like this is kind of like a series that we read, as we did read it like a section by section over 5 segments over 10 weeks. So I'm just gonna go into spoilers now, and I hope that that's okay. But I highly recommend reading it. So I guess my first thing is that the characters in this are so interesting to me. The way that the smallest character can make the biggest impact on the plot, like the priest in the very beginning. Right from the very beginning, I was very much invested in learning about this man, even though I knew he was not Jean Valjean. And I didn't know how he related to the plot, but I was very much invested in the writing style. And that's something I wanted to also say, is that the writing style is so easy to read. And I found that was something I was really invested in with this, was maybe it was a translation or the audiobook I was listening to. Either way, I was super invested in the writing style. It made it very manageable for me to engross myself in, and once I started listening, it was easier for me to continue every time. So once the very first character was introduced, being the priest, I was like fully invested. And once we discovered that he is the first one who helps Jean Valjean and shows him mercy, I was like, I'm sold. Whatever happens with this, I am on board, because these characters are going to be people who may show up for a page or two in like the lifespan of Jean Valjean, but they're going to make an impact. So I don't know, it was just so impactful to me to see these little minor characters do that. And then even now, I'm filming this a month after finishing this giant book. Gavroche is still haunting me. He was such a minor character in the grand scheme of this thing, but he still haunts me. He was the darling of the book for me, and his joy of life and his singing in spite of being shot at, and his ready to like fight for his king and country. Well, not his king, but his country. Oh, and then the way it ended with him, I'm just like, I'm still heartbroken over that. I'm still heartbroken. So these characters like get you. And then Monsieur, the older one, the one who died in the same battle, yeah, they get you. Hugo has a way of writing characters who can grab your heart and in a very short time make you feel connected to them and then crush you. It's very sad. But then at the same time, you have this humanity, this hope that like threads through the book, and you see all this wretchedness and this heartbreak and these awful people. And at the same time, you see these good moments and these heroic acts woven in between. And it is flawless. It is flawless in this character development, which I think is spectacular. I also think that Javert is such an interesting character because of such a black and white worldview. And I know he's not the most popular character. I know. And I also think that like I can be that way. So I can relate to Javert in some ways. And I used to be, as a child, very much like Javert, in that perspective. And I think without it being checked, people can become that way. And you have to see things through the lens of not everything's black and white. So having Javert be the villain in the sense that he is always trying to protect the law, I thought that was really interesting the whole time reading this book, being like, we have one villain, but at the same time, the other villains in this book, being the Thénardiers, they are just so evil. And that sentence about how, was it the devil sat in the corner of their inn and was horrified, that really struck true with how they were as characters, and how they truly were the personification of villainy. And they're like the worst villains I've ever read in my life. And they are so bad. Monsieur Thénardier is like the worst. And Madame Thénardier is on top of that evil. The abuse they show to their children in terms of emotional and like physical, not physical towards the children, and neglect, and then the like verbal abuse, and then to the child who's in their care being Cosette, all of the abuse that they show her, except for sexual, is just horrific. And to do that to children, which I think Hugo always uses children as a sense of innocence and vulnerability. It was just so sad to see, but it really showed their depravity. And it was just something that really exemplified how awful they were as people. And you really saw that. But at the same time, the Thénardiers were so consistently throughout the book because they needed to be present to do those plot points, which I thought was so fascinating too. So those characters were really interesting to me, but also they top every villain I've ever read about. I do have some complaints about Cosette because she seemed very one note and very docile and sweet. And honestly, I have seen trauma with children from my personal experience working with kids. And when they undergo trauma before even the age of 2 and 3, they definitely don't react like Cosette did, because she was 8 when she manages to leave due to Valjean. And when she got to the convent and she manages to be free, and suddenly she's all docile and doesn't understand the evil in the world. It just, before she gets there, it's very true to the trauma that she would have experienced. But after that, it's like she doesn't remember anything. So I feel like that was not very well done. So that's one complaint I have. But Eponine as another female character was so masterfully done. And I feel like she encompassed the whole, she was a villain and then she turned to being good. But we have that whole arc with her. And I was so sad with her when she died, and the whole sacrifice that she gave of herself for Marius. Also, Marius, he's a drama king, total drama king. But I don't know. I don't hate him, but I don't see the appeal with him. We can go with that. He is young and he has a lot of life experience to collect still, but Cosette and Marius were the two characters I felt like I just did not understand, or I felt like their motivations weren't quite on point with their behavior. So those are my two complaints with character development. Everyone else, though, I felt like I knew, from the smallest representation of a character to the biggest character of all being Jean Valjean. And I think with Jean Valjean, with him, I just felt my heart go out to him time and time again, especially with his changing identities and never being able to truly understand who he is. That song in the musical versions where it's like, who am I? He struggled with that identity battle for so long. Every single time he comes to a new place and a new location, he has to rename himself so he's not caught by the police because they're hunting him down. And he can never truly be himself, which is just so fascinating, because then he's always hiding behind this persona. And even then he's hiding behind the persona of Cosette's father. He's hiding behind the persona of, I cannot pronounce that name, the man who worked in the convents. He's pretending to be his brother. He's hiding behind everyone. He's being the mayor. He's just being every single person except for himself. So he can never truly relax. And I feel like we always saw glimmers or glimpses of him or reflections of him, but never really saw the true man behind the mirror or behind the curtain. We never truly saw Valjean until the end. And he was always either on the run or in defensive mode or protective mode. And I feel like it was so clever, because then whenever this happened, or whenever there was like a man who was appearing, I was like, it's Valjean, because of course you have to assume, in this book at least, I feel like I did, that whenever someone is appearing and you don't know who it is, you could just assume it's Valjean, because it's got to be someone. It's either him or Javert, because they're always hiding, they're always protecting themselves and their identity, either to run from the law or to catch Valjean if it's Javert. So this whole balance of identity is such a big theme in this book, even though it's about the wretched people, it's about the poor, it's about the downtrodden, it's about how people who are trying their best never get ahead. And yet there's so much of a theme of identity through this book. In regards to the side quests of this book, I found many of them to be fascinating, however, pointless. But I did find that they added to my experience of it. And when it came to certain ones like slang, that one was useless, to me at least. And I feel like someone who would do speech therapy would find that one very fascinating. But certain ones that were about the convents or about different aspects about prison, I found those to be really interesting, because I feel like as much as the side quests were repetitive, or were maybe not repetitive, but they were very much detracting from the book, I feel like I got to know Victor Hugo as a person. And I feel like that added to my experience of reading this, because Not only did I read the book and learn about the characters, I learned about the author too. I learned about his philosophy on life, and I learned about how he viewed the poor and how he viewed the people around him, how he viewed society, how he viewed religion, how he viewed the sewer system. That was a struggle at times. How he viewed different political aspects. And I found that to be really fascinating because at the very least, I learned about Victor Hugo as a person. And sometimes it can be hard when you're reading a book to separate the author from the work. But in these cases, I found that I could easily separate Hugo from the characters. Because in some cases, like these side quests, you could tell it was him trying to spout his ideas, which I didn't always agree with, but I found very fascinating because then I could see where he thought about certain aspects. I have said so much about this book and my thoughts and all of the different aspects about it in the live streams that I honestly can't think of anything else to say. So I'm going to probably wrap this up here, but I do highly recommend if you want an in-depth discussion about this to go to our live streams. And Victoria, Christy Lewis, and I all talk about this, and we talked a lot, but I highly recommend checking that out if you want to have our full thoughts on it. But yeah, this one was something that I am very thankful to have read now. I feel like I know Victor Hugo better as an author, even though I've only really read this one, and I feel like Lemez is going to stick with me. These characters, these people are real to me. They felt real when I read it, and they feel so common now, and these themes survive to this day. And I feel like the biggest theme of all in this was hope, because as much as, like I said before, there were these awful people, and these awful characters, and these awful things, the moments of goodness, the moments of heroic acts were popping up, and they would be present throughout, and these moments of hope would appear. And I think that that's what this book is really about. Like, these awful things would happen, but yet these hopeful moments, these hopeful things would happen. And it was about how, you know, your life can be awful, but you can still be a moment of hope for someone else, I think. At least that's what I took from it. So I thought it was wonderful, and I am so happy I read it. It wasn't a perfect book, but I still gave it 5 stars because the moment after I couldn't give it anything less than 5 stars. That was just my emotional feeling, and the way I could not do that. I could not give it anything less. So this is my most recent timeless tome. I do have 2 more on the way, which I'm currently reading one of them, and I'll be reading the second one shortly after that. So I'm reading The Moonstone by Wilkie Collins and Ruth by Elizabeth Gaskell, and I'll be giving timeless tome reviews on those very shortly, which will be back much more in my usual style. So you can keep your eye out for those for her Victober. But yeah, this was my most recent one. I guess this is my final Lemez review, and I hope you enjoyed this. If you are new here and you would like to subscribe, please do. And you can always hit that notification bell if you are new or if you have not yet done that yet. Also, you can like this video if you enjoyed it and leave a comment down below if you've read Lemez or if you're at all interested in picking it up. I will see you next time. Bye for now.